My name is Princess Maryam Al-Rashid. I am 24 years old. And 3 days ago, I died. Not metaphorically. Not spiritually. I actually died. My heart stopped beating. My lungs stopped breathing. 2 royal physicians declared me dead at 11:43 p.m. on March 12, 2019. They covered my body with a white linen sheet embroidered with gold thread, the kind reserved for Saudi royalty. 4 guards from the Royal Guard stood watch over my corpse, following protocol that has existed for 300 years. But at 3:17 a.m. on March 13, something happened that shattered every protocol, every law of nature, every certainty my family had ever known. At 3:17 a.m., I opened my eyes. And the 4 guards who witnessed it fell to their knees, 2 of them weeping, 1 fainting completely, because they had just watched Jesus Christ raise a dead Muslim princess back to life. I'm sitting in a prison cell right now as I tell you this. It's 4:47 in the morning. In a few hours, I'm supposed to be executed for apostasy and sorcery. My own mother poisoned me 3 days ago to preserve our family's honor. The Saudi government wants to behead me publicly to prove that my resurrection wasn't a miracle from God, but witchcraft that must be punished. My name, Maryam, means Mary, the mother of Jesus in both the Quran and the Bible. My mother chose this name hoping I would be blessed. She never imagined I would actually meet the son of the woman whose name I carry. And she certainly never imagined that meeting him would cost me everything I ever had, and give me everything that truly matters. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the golden cage where my story started. I was born into a level of wealth that most people cannot even imagine. My father is an emir, a prince who governs one of the richest oil regions in Saudi Arabia. Our palace has 340 rooms. The floors are Italian marble, cold beneath my bare feet even in the summer heat when temperatures outside reached 120 degrees. We had Persian tapestries hanging on our walls that were over 500 years old, worth more than most people earn in their entire lives. Servants moved through the corridors like ghosts, silent, invisible, trained never to make eye contact with royalty. I was 3rd in line of succession. I was educated at Oxford University, where I studied international relations and learned to speak 5 languages fluently: Arabic, English, French, Mandarin, and Russian. I attended state dinners where kings and presidents smiled for cameras. I wore dresses that cost $40,000 and jewelry that required armed security. I had everything a woman could want. Except a soul that felt alive. Have you ever felt invisible while everyone is looking at you? Have you ever smiled for so many photographs that you forgot what a real smile felt like? I was a living doll in a glass case made of gold. Beautiful. Expensive. Utterly empty. When I was 19, my family arranged my marriage to a Kuwaiti prince. The wedding cost $14 million. 1,200 guests. A ceremony broadcast on television across the Arab world. I wore a dress with 8,000 hand-sewn crystals. And as I walked down that aisle covered in rose petals imported from Ecuador, I felt absolutely nothing. The marriage lasted 2 years. He divorced me, as is his right under Islamic law, and I returned to my father's palace. Damaged goods. A failed investment. Still a princess by blood, but now a princess that no one quite knew what to do with. That's when the emptiness became unbearable. I would stand in my bedroom, which was larger than most people's entire homes, and stare at the ornate ceiling, counting the gold patterns while my soul screamed in silence. I prayed the 5 daily prayers required of Muslims. I performed wudu, the ritual washing of hands, face, and feet that must be done before each prayer, but even as the water ran cold over my skin, I felt nothing inside. The prayers were words. Just words echoing in an empty room. I fasted during Ramadan, the holy month when Muslims abstain from food and drink from dawn to sunset. I read the Quran in Arabic. I followed every rule. And still, I felt like I was suffocating under layers of silk and duty and expectations that had nothing to do with who I actually was. Do you know what it's like to live someone else's life? To wake up every morning and put on a costume, a smile, a role that fits your body but crushes your spirit? I was 23 years old, and I had never made a single real decision in my entire life. My education was chosen for me. My husband was chosen for me. My clothes, my friends, my schedule, Every minute of every day was choreographed by tradition and family politics and the weight of a bloodline that stretched back centuries. And I started to wonder, does Allah even know my name? Does he see me, Maryam, the person, or does he only see Princess Maryam Al-Rashid, the title, the role, the political piece on a chessboard I never asked to play on? That question terrified me. Because if I asked it out loud, I would be guilty of doubt. And doubt, in the world I came from, was more dangerous than any crime. 6 months after my divorce, my father sent me to London. Officially, it was for a diplomatic conference on women's education in the Gulf states. Unofficially, it was exile. A way to get me out of sight while the family figured out what to do with a divorced princess who made everyone uncomfortable. I stayed at the Langham Hotel, a 5-star palace of marble and crystal in the heart of London. My suite overlooked Regent Street. I had a personal butler. Fresh flowers delivered every morning. And I had never felt more alone in my entire life. On my second night there, I found a book in the drawer of my bedside table. A Bible. The Gideon's International places them in hotels around the world, hoping someone, somewhere, might open one and find hope. I had seen Bibles before, of course. You can't study at Oxford without encountering Christianity. But I had never actually read one. The Quran teaches that the Bible has been corrupted, changed by human hands, inferior to the final revelation given to the Prophet Muhammad. So I picked it up out of curiosity, the way you might examine an artifact in a museum. I expected to find contradictions. Proof of corruption. Evidence that would confirm everything I'd been taught about the superiority of Islam. I opened it randomly. And I landed on Matthew chapter 5. The Sermon on the Mount. And I read these words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Poor in spirit. I stared at those words for 10 minutes. I was surrounded by wealth beyond imagination, and I was completely, devastatingly poor in spirit. I had nothing inside. I was bankrupt in my soul, and no amount of money, no title, no palace could fill the void. I kept reading. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Something cracked open inside my chest. I was hungry. I was starving. I had been thirsty my entire life for something real, something true, something that saw me and loved me not because of my bloodline but because I was human and broken and desperate. I read for 3 hours that night. And when I finally closed the Bible at 2 in the morning, my hands were shaking. The next day, I hired a private tour guide. Her name was Sarah. She was a British woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a gentle voice. What I didn't know then was that Sarah was a Christian missionary who volunteered with an organization that ministered to wealthy Middle Eastern women visiting London. She didn't preach. She didn't push. She just answered my questions. And I had so many questions. Do Christians really believe Jesus is God? I asked her as we walked through the British Museum. Yes, she said simply. We believe Jesus is God in human flesh. Fully God and fully man. But how can God die? If Jesus died on the cross, doesn't that mean God is weak? She smiled. God didn't have to die. He chose to die. He chose to take the punishment for our sins so that we could be forgiven and have a relationship with Him. That's not weakness, Maryam. That's love beyond anything we can comprehend. Love. The word hit me like a physical blow. I had never, in all my years of Islamic teaching, heard anyone describe Allah as loving me personally. Allah was just. Allah was merciful. Allah was all-powerful. But Allah loved me? Allah knew my name, knew my pain, cared about the emptiness in my chest? Does He see me? I whispered. Does Jesus see me? Sarah stopped walking. She turned and looked at me with tears in her eyes. Oh, Maryam. He sees you. He's always seen you. And He's been waiting for you to see Him. I downloaded a Bible app on a secret phone I bought with cash. I created an account with a fake name. And every night, back in my hotel room, I read. I devoured the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. I read about Jesus healing the sick, raising the dead, touching the untouchable, loving the unlovable. I read about him calling fishermen to follow him. I read about him weeping at the tomb of his friend Lazarus. I read about him forgiving a woman caught in adultery when everyone else wanted to stone her to death. And I thought, this is a God who enters our suffering. This is a God who doesn't demand perfection but offers grace. This is a God who sees women as human beings, not property. What would you risk to know the truth, even if the truth could destroy everything you've ever known? I returned to Saudi Arabia 2 weeks later. I returned to the palace, to the marble floors and the golden cages and the suffocating expectations. But I brought something back with me that was more dangerous than any weapon. I brought faith. Secret, hidden, burning faith that I couldn't extinguish no matter how hard I tried. I read my Bible every night at 2 in the morning when the entire palace was asleep. I hid it in a secret compartment in my escritoire, an antique writing desk that had belonged to my grandmother. I would sit on the cold bathroom floor, door locked, and read by the light of my phone with the sound turned off. And with every chapter, every verse, every story of Jesus, I felt the chains around my soul loosening. But the conflict inside me was tearing me apart. Every time I performed wudu, I felt like a hypocrite. Every time I bowed toward Mecca, I wanted to bow toward the cross. Every time I recited verses from the Quran, I heard Jesus's words in my head, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I knew what I was doing was treason. Not just against my family, but against my entire culture, my entire identity. To leave Islam is apostasy, punishable by death under Sharia law. To accept Jesus as God is shirk, the unforgivable sin of associating partners with Allah. I was risking everything. My title, my family, my life. But I couldn't stop. Because for the first time in my life, I felt like I was breathing real air. On January 12, 2019, at 2:22 in the morning, I knelt on the marble floor of my bathroom with my Bible open in my lap. I had been reading the Gospel of John, chapter 10, where Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. And I couldn't hold it in anymore. I whispered, my voice cracking, Jesus, if you are real, if you truly see me, if you're really the Son of God, I surrender everything. I don't care what it costs. I don't care if I lose it all. I want you. I need you. I'm yours. And I'm telling you the truth when I say this, that bathroom filled with peace I had never experienced in my life. It wasn't emotional hype. It wasn't my imagination. It was a physical sensation, like warm water washing over my entire body. The weight I had carried on my chest for 24 years lifted. Just gone. I wept, and I couldn't stop weeping, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, like someone who had been drowning finally breaking the surface and gasping in air. I became a follower of Jesus Christ in a marble bathroom in a Saudi palace at 2:22 in the morning. And in that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. Could you live a lie every single day to protect a truth that burns inside you? For 3 weeks, I did. I performed the 5 daily prayers while praying to Jesus in my heart. I attended family dinners and smiled and discussed politics and charity galas while my soul sang hymns I had memorized from my Bible app. I was 2 people living in one body. Princess Maryam by day, follower of Jesus by night. And it was the most exhausting, most exhilarating, most terrifying 3 weeks of my life. But secrets, especially dangerous secrets, have a way of being discovered. I had an attendant named Fatima who had been with me for 20 years. She was more than an employee. She was like a second mother. She braided my hair when I was a child. She held me when I cried after my divorce. I trusted her with everything. Which is why I got careless. I thought my secret compartment in my desk was safe. I thought my 2 a.m. reading sessions were invisible. I thought I had been careful enough. I was wrong. On February 2nd, I was attending a charity luncheon at a hotel in Riyadh. I was giving a speech about women's literacy, wearing a modest navy dress and a hijab pinned with a diamond brooch. I smiled for photographs. I shook hands with donors. I played my role perfectly. And while I was performing, Fatima was cleaning my room. And she found the hidden compartment in my desk. And she found my Bible, with pages worn from reading, verses underlined, margins filled with notes in my handwriting. She went directly to my mother. My mother is the first wife of my father, which means she has more political power than his 3 other wives combined. She is elegant, educated, ruthless when it comes to protecting the family name. And when Fatima showed her that Bible, my mother made a decision that would change both of our lives forever. That evening, my father summoned me to the family's private council room. It's a chamber reserved for serious matters, disputes that must be handled internally before they become public scandals. The room is lined with dark wood panels, lit by antique brass lamps. My father sat at the head of a long table. My mother sat to his right. My 3 older brothers sat along the sides. And they all stared at me with expressions I had never seen before. Disgust. Betrayal. Fury. My Bible sat in the center of the table like evidence at a crime scene. "Is this yours?" my father asked. His voice was low, controlled, which made it more terrifying than if he had shouted. I could have lied. I could have said Fatima planted it. I could have said I was studying Christianity to refute it. I could have saved myself. But something inside me, something stronger than fear, made me lift my chin and say, yes. It's mine. Have you renounced Islam? My mother asked. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. I have accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, I said. I believe He is the Son of God. I believe He died for my sins and rose from the dead. And I cannot deny Him. My oldest brother slammed his fist on the table. You have brought shame on our entire bloodline. Do you understand what you've done? You're not just a Muslim who left Islam. You're a princess. A symbol of our family. If this gets out, we are ruined. I'm sorry for the pain this causes you, I said quietly. But I cannot deny the truth. Truth. My mother's voice rose for the first time. You've been deceived by Western lies. You've been corrupted. That university poisoned your mind. My mind was never more clear than it is right now, I said. My father stood. He walked around the table slowly until he was standing directly in front of me. I am giving you one chance, Maryam. 1. Renounce this madness. Burn that book. Recommit yourself to Islam. And we will never speak of this again. I looked into his eyes. I saw the father who had taught me to ride horses, who had celebrated when I was accepted to Oxford, who had walked me down the aisle at my wedding. And I whispered, I can't, Father. I love you, but I cannot deny Jesus, even to save my life. He struck me across the face, not hard enough to cause real damage, but hard enough to show his fury. Then you are no longer my daughter. The trial was private, but the verdict was absolute. I was a traitor, an apostate, a disgrace, and I had to be dealt with. But a public execution would raise too many questions. Foreign media would investigate. Human rights organizations would protest. My education at Oxford meant I had connections, classmates who would ask uncomfortable questions. So my mother suggested an alternative. A quiet solution. Poison. On March 12th, at 6:30 in the evening, my mother came to my room. She was carrying a silver tray with a teapot and 2 cups. Hibiscus tea, the kind we had shared 1,000 times throughout my childhood. She poured a cup and handed it to me with shaking hands. Please, Maryam, she whispered. Please drink with me one last time. I took the cup. I could smell the hibiscus, sweet and floral. But underneath it, there was something else. A metallic scent, sharp and wrong. And I knew. I looked at my mother, and she was crying, silent tears streaming down her face. And I understood. This was her mercy. This was her way of ending me without a public beheading. This was love, twisted by culture and religion and honor into something monstrous. I could have refused. I could have thrown the cup across the room. But I was so tired. So tired of fighting, of hiding, of being 2 people. And a part of me thought, maybe this is God's plan. Maybe I'm supposed to die now, and go home to Jesus. So I drank. The tea was bitter underneath the sweetness. It tasted like rust and despair. I drank the entire cup while my mother watched, tears falling into her lap. Within 20 minutes, the pain started. It felt like fire in my stomach, spreading through my intestines, burning me from the inside out. I collapsed on my bedroom floor, convulsing. I vomited blood onto the marble, red on white like a grotesque painting. My mother screamed for the royal physicians. They came running. They gave me injections, tried to pump my stomach, but the poison had already done its work. Battery acid, diluted in tea. Slow. Agonizing. Effective. I remember staring at the ceiling, watching the gold patterns blur and spin. I remember thinking, I'm dying. This is what dying feels like. And I wasn't afraid of death. But I was terrified that I had failed. That I would never get to tell anyone about Jesus. That my testimony would die with me in a locked room in a Saudi palace. At 11:43 p.m., my heart stopped. Dr. Al-Farsi, one of the royal physicians, checked my pulse. Nothing. He listened for breath. Nothing. He looked at Dr. Mansour, the second physician, and said, "She's gone." They covered me with a white linen sheet embroidered with gold thread. 4 guards from the royal guard were stationed around my body. Protocol. Protection. Witnesses to ensure that a royal corpse was treated with dignity until burial, which according to Islamic custom must happen within 24 hours of death. And then I experienced something I cannot fully explain in words. Darkness. Absolute, complete darkness. Not the absence of light, but the presence of emptiness. I was dead. My soul had left my body. And for a moment, I was terrified that I had been wrong. That Islam had been right. That I was facing judgment for apostasy. But then, in that darkness, I heard a voice. And the voice said, "Maryam." And light exploded into existence. Not gradually. Not like a sunrise. Like someone had turned on the sun inside the void. And I saw him. Jesus Christ. I'm not speaking metaphorically. I saw him. He had dark hair that fell to his shoulders. Eyes that contained all the compassion of the universe. And hands stretched toward me, palms up, and I could see the scars. The nail scars. Proof that he had died, that he understood death, that he had conquered it. He smiled at me. And he said, in a voice that sounded like 1,000 rivers flowing, like thunder and music and perfect peace all at once, "Maryam, your time is not finished. Rise and testify." And then he touched my forehead with one scarred hand. At 3:17 a.m. on March 13, 2019, light began to emanate from underneath the sheet covering my body. The 4 guards noticed it first. One of them, Corporal Rashid, later testified that the light was brighter than the Saudi sun at noon, but it didn't hurt his eyes. It was warm. Alive. The temperature in the room, which had been a comfortable 75 degrees Fahrenheit, dropped to 54 degrees in a matter of seconds. The digital thermostat on the wall recorded it. They checked later. 54 degrees. Impossible without a malfunction. Except it wasn't a malfunction. The sheet moved. Not like wind was blowing it, but like someone was sitting up underneath it. And I was. I sat up. I opened my eyes. I took a breath. And the sheet fell away from my face. The guards fell to their knees. One of them, a young man named Ibrahim, fainted completely. Another started to weep, loud, gasping sobs. Corporal Rashid whispered, "Allahu Akbar," which means God is great, but he said it in terror, not worship, because he had just witnessed something that should have been impossible. I looked at them. And I said, in a voice that was hoarse but clear, "Jesus Christ raised me from the dead. I died in Islamic darkness, and he brought me back to life in his light. Tell everyone what you have seen." The physicians were called back. Dr. Al-Farsi checked my pulse. Present. Strong. 72 beats per minute. He checked my temperature. 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal. He checked my eyes, my reflexes, my breathing. All normal. He looked at Dr. Mansour, and they both looked at me like I was a ghost. Because according to every law of medicine, I was. I had been dead. 2 physicians had declared it. And now I was alive. My family was summoned immediately. My father, my mother, my brothers, they all came running. They stared at me like I was a demon, a monster, something that shouldn't exist. My mother collapsed, wailing. My father stood frozen, his face pale as marble. And my oldest brother looked at me with pure hatred and said, "This is sorcery. She has made a deal with demons." If God raised someone from the dead right before your eyes, could you still deny him? They could. Because acknowledging that Jesus had performed a miracle would mean admitting that he is who he says he is. And they would not do that. So they made a new decision. I was not a miracle. I was a witch. A practitioner of forbidden magic. And I needed to be executed publicly to prove to everyone that my resurrection was not from God, but from Satan. They brought me before an Islamic court 2 days later. The courtroom was filled with religious scholars, judges in white robes and red-checked headdresses. They read the charges: apostasy and sorcery. The penalty for either is death. The penalty for both is public execution. The chief judge asked me, "Do you recant your apostasy? Do you return to Islam?" I stood in chains. My wrists were raw from the metal cuffs. My body was still weak from the poison. But my voice was strong. I was born Muslim. I died Muslim. And Jesus Christ raised me from death because he loves me. He is the Son of God. He is Lord. And I will not deny him, even if you kill me right now. The courtroom erupted in shouts. Blasphemy. Stone her. Death to the apostate. The judge raised his hand for silence. He looked at me with something almost like pity. Maryam bint Al-Rashid, you are sentenced to death by beheading. The sentence will be carried out in 3 days, on March 15, 2019, at 6 a.m. in the public square of Riyadh. They took me to a prison cell. It was small, concrete, with a single barred window high on the wall. No furniture except a thin mat on the floor. And I sat on that mat, and I prayed. Not out of desperation. Out of gratitude. Because I was alive. Because Jesus had raised me. Because even if they killed me tomorrow, I had tasted resurrection. And nothing, no sword, no death, could ever take that away from me. I spent 3 days in that cell. 3 days of peace I cannot fully describe. I sung hymns quietly. I prayed. I thanked Jesus for saving me. And I prepared to die. Because I knew that dying for him would be the greatest honor of my life. On the morning of March 15th, at 4:30 a.m., 2 hours before my scheduled execution, I heard shouting in the corridor. Loud voices. Urgent footstep. And then my cell door opened. A guard stood there, flanked by 2 officials from the British Embassy. And one of them said, "Princess Maryam, we are here to escort you to the United Kingdom. There has been a diplomatic intervention." I stared at them in confusion. I don't understand. "The video," the official said. "The video of your resurrection. It leaked." One of the guards recorded it on his phone. It went viral. Millions of views in 48 hours. Human rights organizations, foreign governments, media outlets, everyone is demanding your release. The Saudi government has agreed to extradite you rather than execute you. But you must leave now. And you can never come back. I was taken directly from the prison to a private airfield. I was put on a plane with nothing but the clothes I was wearing. No money. No passport. No possessions. I was stripped of my title, my citizenship, my family. I was officially banished from Saudi Arabia for life. If I ever returned, the death sentence would be carried out immediately. My family disowned me publicly. My name was erased from official records. It was as if Princess Maryam Al-Rashid had never existed. But I was alive. And I was free. I landed in London with nothing. The British government granted me asylum. A church in London, the same church where Sarah attended, welcomed me. They gave me a room in a safe house. They helped me apply for residency. They surrounded me with people who loved Jesus, who celebrated my testimony, who wept with me over what I had lost and rejoiced with me over what I had gained. I started working as a translator. I spoke 5 languages, remember, and refugees from the Middle East were flooding into Europe. I translated for Syrian refugees, Iraqi refugees, Afghan refugees. And I told my story. Every time I translated for a Muslim family, I would find a moment to say, I was a Muslim princess. Jesus raised me from the dead. And he can transform your life too. In the past 5 years, I have personally witnessed 47 Muslims come to faith in Jesus Christ. 47 people who heard my testimony and decided to risk everything to follow him. Some of them were refugees. Some were wealthy businesspeople. Some were students. But all of them heard about a God who doesn't just demand obedience, but offers love. A God who doesn't stay distant, but enters our suffering. A God who raises the dead. I met a British pastor named David 3 years ago. He volunteered with the same refugee ministry where I worked. He was kind, patient, steady. He didn't treat me like a celebrity or a charity case. He treated me like a woman. A beloved daughter of God. We fell in love slowly, carefully. And we got married 2 years ago in that same church that took me in when I had nothing. I wore a simple white dress, nothing like the crystal-covered monstrosity I wore at my first wedding. And when David took my hands and vowed to love me for the rest of our lives, I wept. Because I finally understood what covenant love looks like. Love that doesn't use you. Love that doesn't abandon you. Love that reflects the love of Jesus. We have 2 children now. Sophie is 3 years old, with her father's blue eyes and my dark hair. Daniel is 1, and he laughs like sunlight sounds. I am no longer a princess by title. But I am a daughter of the King of Kings. And that is a title no one can ever take from me. I write a blog called From Palace to Purpose. Thousands of people follow it, most of them women from Muslim backgrounds who are searching for hope, for freedom, for a God who sees them. I get messages every day from women who tell me they're reading the Bible in secret. Women who are praying to Jesus in bathrooms and closets and late at night when their families are asleep. Women who are terrified and desperate and hungry for truth. And I tell them what I know to be true: Jesus sees you. Jesus loves you. And Jesus will never, ever abandon you. I haven't spoken to my biological family since the day I left Saudi Arabia. My father, my mother, my brothers, they are alive, but they are dead to me. Or rather, I am dead to them. They held a funeral for me. Symbolic. Final. Princess Maryam Al-Rashid is buried in the family cemetery in Riyadh. But I am more alive now than I ever was in that palace. Do you know what the strangest thing is? I don't miss it. I don't miss the marble floors or the designer dresses or the jewelry that required armed guards. I don't miss the diplomatic dinners or the state visits or the respectful bows from servants. What I miss is the family I thought I had. I miss the mother who braided my hair before the mother who poisoned my tea. I miss the father who taught me to ride horses before the father who disowned me. But I have a new family now. A global family of believers who would die for each other. Who pray for each other. Who love without condition and forgive without limit. I live in a 2-bedroom flat in London. I take the underground to work. I shop at Tesco. I am ordinary in every way that the world measures worth. And I have never been happier. Because I know something that most people never learn: you can lose everything and still have everything that matters. You can be stripped of title, wealth, family, country, and still be rich beyond measure. Because if you have Jesus, you have life. Real life. Abundant life. Eternal life. If Jesus can resurrect a poisoned princess in a Saudi palace surrounded by guards and physicians who declared her dead, he can reach you wherever you are. If he can transform a woman born into one of the strictest Islamic families in the world, he can transform anyone. The question is not whether Jesus can change your life. He already proved he can. The question is whether you're willing to let him, no matter what it costs. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that following Jesus is easy or safe or comfortable. It cost me everything I thought I wanted. But it gave me everything I actually needed. And if I had to choose again, knowing everything I know now, knowing the poison and the pain and the prison and the exile, I would choose Jesus 1,000 times over. Because he is worth it. He is worth everything. My name is Maryam. It means Mary. The mother of Jesus carried that name. And now I carry it too, not as a princess of an earthly kingdom, but as a daughter of the King who conquered death. The King who looked at me in the darkness and said, "Rise." The King who loved me enough to die for me. And I will spend the rest of my life telling anyone who will listen, he can do the same for you. All you have to do is surrender. All you have to do is say, "Jesus, I'm yours." And he will meet you right where you are. In a palace or a prison. In wealth or in poverty. In secret or in public. He will meet you. And he will change everything. That's my story. That's my testimony. And I pray that it points you to the only one who can truly save.